At the beginning, nobody noticed. There was no bang in the sky, nor a tremor capable of waking entire cities. There was no exact moment that could be marked in historical records as the beginning of the end. What happened was silent, almost polite, as if the planet itself had decided to fail without bothering. The sensors detected it first: minimal oscillations, microscopic differences in orbital calculations, an imperceptible delay in the displacement of shadows throughout the day, nothing that justified immediate alarm. 30%. That was the real value of the deceleration of Kálior's rotation. 30% less movement distributed over months, small enough to be ignored by rulers, large enough to be fatal for an entire world. Kálior was not a common planet. It was ancient, stable, shaped by billions of years of balance between heat and cold. Its deep oceans regulated the global temperature. Its long continents allowed complex but predictable atmospheric currents. Life had developed there following a clear rhythm: day, night, seasons, cycles. Nothing on Kálior existed outside the time imposed by rotation. The people of Kálior evolved learning to respect this rhythm. Their ancient cities were built according to the path of the sun. Their calendars were not just social instruments, but biological maps. Even their emotions were influenced by the alternation of light and darkness. For centuries, this worked, until comfort began to be treated as an absolute right. The first megacities emerged as symbols of progress, colossal structures that rose above the clouds, connected by aerial corridors, supported by foundations that penetrated kilometers below the crust. There, technology and ambition mixed without clear limits. The problem came quickly: excessive heat, climatic instability, violent storms generated by urban concentration itself. The planet was not prepared for such artificial density. And then someone suggested the perfect solution: the gravitational anchors. The name sounded stable, safe, definitive. The anchors were gigantic structures installed deeply beneath the cities, capable of manipulating local gravitational fields. They did not affect the entire planet, the report said. They only stabilized the immediate environment. They controlled the circulation of air masses, reduced thermal extremes, maintained constant temperatures. Climate under control. For the urban elites, it was like conquering the sky itself. Anchored cities stopped knowing harsh winters or brutal summers. The concept of season became obsolete. Productivity skyrocketed, the population grew, profit exploded. Other cities demanded the same. Nobody wanted to be left behind on a planet where climate was beginning to define economic power. The anchors multiplied. What nobody noticed or preferred to ignore was that each anchor, no matter how small its individual interference, tampered with forces much greater than their designers fully understood. Kálior's core was not an isolated piece. It was part of a living, sensitive, interconnected system. Thousands of anchors began to act like hands holding a mechanism that needed to rotate freely. At first, the planet resisted. Then it began to give in. The first scientists who pointed out inconsistencies in rotation were ridiculed. Their simulations were too complex for the general public. Their warnings did not fit into political slogans. Turning off anchors meant confronting gigantic corporations and billions of citizens accustomed to artificial comfort. It was easier to discredit the data. Then the sky changed. In the hemisphere facing the sun, the day began to last too long. The sun did not advance as before. It remained high, motionless, pouring energy without pause. Heat accumulated. Oceans began to evaporate faster than they could replenish. Water levels receded in some regions, while others faced violent storms caused by thermal imbalance. The anchors, designed to stabilize the climate, began to trap heat. They maintained constant temperatures when the problem was no longer constancy, but excess. Entire cities began to boil. Glass shattered, cooling systems failed. People died inside their own climate-controlled homes, victims of a heat that had nowhere to escape. On the other side of the planet, night fell, and did not pass. The opposite hemisphere plunged into continuous darkness. Without sufficient sunlight, temperatures rapidly plummeted. Lakes froze. Oceans began to form ice crusts. Agriculture collapsed within a few weeks. The absence of light affected something deeper. People lost their sense of time. Without sunrise, without sunset, the body collapsed. Mental disorders spread. Depression, psychotic episodes, violence. The cold was not only physical, it was psychological. Kálior was dividing itself. One side burned, the other froze. In the middle, a narrow strip of territory remained in an eternal twilight, the only region still habitable. Millions migrated there. Armed conflicts exploded over space, water, and food. The planet began to witness internal climate wars. At that moment, an ancient name began circulating again: the Order of the Axis. For centuries treated as myth, an ancient sect associated with circular temples built in the early days of civilization. They said its members studied the planet as if it were a living being, that they believed interfering with rotation was a sin greater than any war. Now their records began to make sense. Ancient messages spoke of a planetary heart and of a pulse that cannot be interrupted without consequences. Texts ignored for generations began to be analyzed in desperation. The delegations left too late. At the center of the planet, far from the megacities, the Temple of the Axis still existed, a colossal construction, partially buried, perfectly aligned with the original axis of rotation of Kálior. There, the Order had never stopped watching, and waiting for them was Erish. Too old for his species, too calm for the chaos consuming the world. His eyes reflected something rare at that moment: acceptance. "You did not control the climate. You interrupted the movement of life," he said, while observing the motionless sun in the sky. The leaders wanted quick answers, technical solutions. They wanted to turn off anchors gradually, test corrections, buy time. Erish shook his head. "The planet is not a system that restarts. It is an injured organism, and ignored wounds always become infected." Then he spoke of an ancient method, a forgotten protocol, based not on force, but on resonance, a way to stimulate the planet's core to resume its natural spin. But there was a price that nobody wanted to pay. And in that heavy silence, everyone understood that perhaps it was already too late. The silence that followed Erish's words was not caused by doubt, but late recognition. Everyone there understood what was implicit. The planet did not just need adjustments, it needed redemption. And redemption always demands sacrifice. The method described by the Order of the Axis was not simple, nor fast, nor safe. It was a process of deep axial resonance, capable of stimulating the planetary core to resume the lost movement. It wouldn't force the spin, it would only remind the planet how to rotate. But for that, something needed to be removed from the system: the gravitational anchors. All of them. At the same time. As long as they existed, the planet would never recover its natural pulse. They were like nails driven into the invisible axis of Kálior. They kept the crust artificially stable while the interior collapsed. Destroying them meant releasing forces accumulated for months. Global earthquakes, continental tsunamis, atmospheric storms never recorded. Volcanoes would awaken, tectonic faults would open, millions would die. But keeping the anchors meant something worse. the slow death of an entire planet. World leaders divided themselves. The megacities built on top of the anchors refused to accept it. For them, destroying the structures meant annihilating their own way of life. They argued that the planet could adapt to a new stationary state, that perhaps life would evolve to endure one hot side and one cold side. Arash listened to everything in silence. Life is not just survival, it is movement. A motionless planet is a dying planet, he said. While debates dragged on, Kálior worsened. In the burning hemisphere, the air became unbreathable. The accumulated heat began to alter atmospheric chemistry. Permanent electrical storms covered the sky. The last evacuated cities became metallic skeletons slowly melting. In the frozen hemisphere, night drove the survivors mad. Entire communities disappeared into the ice. Children were born without ever seeing sunlight. The cold not only killed bodies, but erased memories. In the twilight zone, where eternal day mixed with eternal night, chaos took human form. Millions of refugees disputed space, food, and water. Local wars exploded daily. The planet, which once rotated in balance, now rotated around violence. The decision came late, but it came. When it became clear there was no more time, leaders authorized the plan of the Order of the Axis, not out of courage, but out of desperation. It was act or watch the inevitable end. The global transmission began without prior announcements. All screens on Kálior lit up with the image of the Temple of the Axis. At the center, Arash remained motionless, enveloped by the fixed light of the sun. "This planet existed before us," he said, his voice echoing in all known languages. "It rotated without asking permission. We were guests, and we acted like owners." He explained the process. He explained the consequences. He did not promise salvation. He did not promise survival, only the chance to return to the planet what should never have been taken. "Geoengineering gave us comfort," he concluded, "but it robbed us of humility. Today, we pay for that." When the transmission ended, the world held its breath. The anchors began to fall. First in the smaller cities, then in the megacities that resisted until the last second. Underground explosions tore continents apart. The foundations of towers collapsed. Entire buildings sunk or were thrown into the air. The planet reacted like an injured animal finally breaking free. Earthquakes crossed oceans. Gigantic waves swallowed entire coasts. Volcanoes awakened after eras of silence. The sky darkened under dense clouds, mixing ice and fire in a global storm. In the Temple of the Axis, the ancestral mechanism was activated. There were no buttons, there were no screens, only a system of gigantic rings built to vibrate in perfect harmony with the planetary core. To function, someone needed to remain at the center, manually adjusting the resonance while the planet struggled to reorganize itself. Arash entered without hesitation. The members of the Order knew that nobody would survive there. The forces released were too great. Heat, radiation, gravitational pressure made the place fatal. But the old leader showed no fear. "Someone needs to remind the planet of who it is," he said, before disappearing into the luminous axis. For long minutes, nothing happened. Chaos continued on the surface. Cities died. People screamed. Oceans roared. Then, almost imperceptibly, something changed. The clouds began to move in a different pattern. Atmospheric currents reorganized, and slowly the sun advanced in the sky. It was not a leap, it was not a visible miracle. It was a subtle, almost shy displacement, but enough for sensors across the planet to confirm Kálior was rotating again. The planet remembered its rhythm. The price was high. Millions died. Entire civilizations disappeared. The megacities that symbolized human dominance over nature became ruins. But the planet lived. The final transmission was brief. Images of the moving sky, of the sun finally walking, of ice beginning to retreat, of fire losing strength, and then silence. Nobody could say whether Aresh survived. Nobody found his body. Only the axis, now stabilized, rotating smoothly as it had for billions of years. Kálior entered a new era, an era of reconstruction, marked by fear and learning. The anchors were banned. Geoengineering began to be treated as a last resort, not as a commercial solution. But the question remained, echoing through subsequent generations. When we have the power to change a planet, who decides how far we can go? The planet rotated again, but its inhabitants would never be the same. And if you want to discover how Kálior will be rebuilt, if this civilization truly learned from the mistake, or if at some point it will again try to control what it should not have, then you already know. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter. Like the video to support original stories like this, and watch the next episode where we will explore the future of a world that almost died for believing it could stop its own movement. Because sometimes the greatest mistake of a civilization is not destroying its planet, it is forgetting that it was always in motion.